In the midst of the Great Depression, the housing market took a dive. It was so bad that the federal government decided that they had to get involved. They stood up two agencies, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, the HOLC, and the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration. These two entities standardized what a property needed to be in order to qualify for one of these New Deal loans. One of the tools that they used for this standardization was called the Residential Security Map. These are the redlining maps. They color-coded neighborhoods according to the credit risk associated with the properties in that neighborhood. There have been many studies showing that the redlining maps basically institutionalized segregation by funneling New Deal FHA home loan money to white neighborhoods that had restrictive covenants. But another factor that would determine the credit riskiness of a particular piece of property is the environment in which it was located. Are you right next to the railroad tracks with the train always going by? Are you right next to the town dump where it stinks? Well, that has implications for Signal Hill and Long Beach because these were big oil drilling areas. Homes were right next to derricks. Homes were right next to refineries. And the way the map was supposed to be done, those were considered, the oil industry in itself was considered a noxious industry. And those areas would be redlined. Or would they? Previous to the Great Depression, oil companies were buying up all kinds of land in the Long Beach, Signal Hill, Wilmington area because there was oil underneath it and they were drilling. And they were recruiting workers from all over the country because in California there was a labor shortage. This industry was booming. They needed more workers. They said out loud that they were not interested in hiring non-white workers. Like they made that plain. The industries would build property near their oil refining and oil drilling land for the workers to live on. And so that was part of your pay, is getting a free place for you and your family to live. Then the Great Depression comes. Oil is still being pumped. Oil is still needed, but the per barrel price, the price per barrel is down. So the oil companies are like, we've got to cut costs. They turn around and they tell the workers, you're not living here anymore for free. That's not part of your pay. But we'll sell the house to you for a decent price. And this was a way for them to keep the workers because they still needed workers. They just needed they needed to make quick money because of the Depression and keep the workers and get some quick revenue from the sale of the home from the workers. So this created white working class neighborhoods in Long Beach and in Signal Hill. And these workers own their homes because they had bought them from the oil company where they used to be free tenants. And now they're working for the oil company still, and they're a homeowner. That has implications. So the way it was supposed to work is that a federal appraiser would use legal technologies such as deeds, contracts, restrictive covenants to do his analysis of the credit worthiness of a particular neighborhood. Again, one of those factors was supposed to be how close a neighborhood was to noxious industries or to any environmental element that would make living there not healthy or unpleasant. Here's what would happen in reality. If a neighborhood was all white and census data showed that it had remained white for years and years, and it was next to an oil industry related piece of land, the fact that it was next to an oil industry related piece of land would not drag its rating down. But if a neighborhood was mostly white, or census data, or it was all white today, but census data showed that over the years there had been non-whites living there, and it was next to a oil industry piece of land. The fact that it was adjacent to an oil industry piece of land, plus the fact that subversive elements, i.e. non-whites, were living in or had lived in the area, and it might not stay all white, were used to drag the rating down. So the white working class families in the area, in the neighborhoods where the homes had been purchased from the oil company, were frequently redlined because they weren't all white. This is one of the things that I found in the research I was doing. You actually have to have a little bit of money to have a restrictive covenant because you have to go to court and do this court process to get your neighborhood declared a restrictive covenant neighborhood. And that takes money. White working class people did not have that kind of money, so they couldn't keep their neighborhoods white. So non-whites would move in because people would sell their homes or rent their homes, whatever. And then the federal appraiser comes and he says, you guys are next to the refinery, or you have derricks in your neighborhood. Plus, I see some Asians. Plus, I see some Mexicans. Plus, I see some Negroes. Woo, you are redlined, honey. Then these people were like, well, crap, I'm not even going to be able to sell my home for the amount. My home's underwater now because nobody's going to be able to get a mortgage to buy my home. So I need to just sell it for what I can and move. And that caused a lot of white flight to the neighborhoods that were set up with restrictive covenants like Lakewood. And these areas that were redlined ended up being the only place that Mexicans and Blacks coming to the area after World War II could rent or could get a loan to buy a home in a redlined area. Now, let me say this. If there were any mineral rights underneath the house, the white person selling at the fire sale price did not sell the mineral rights to the Black and brown people. They only sold the house on top. So Black and brown people ended up living in the most unhealthy places next to the noxious oil refining industries because that's the only place, the redlined area, where they could get a rental a place to rent or a mortgage to buy in a redline area for a higher interest rate, by the way. So they ended up in the places that made them the sickest. And this was due to the white folks who were working class living there not being able to keep the area white and therefore getting the rating dragged down to a redlined area because the place wasn't kept white and you lived next to a noxious industry. So I'm going to link in the description to the paper, PhD thesis paper that I read from which I got most of the information for this video. And the author actually went through some of the redlining residential security map notebooks and read the appraiser's notes. And I just want to read you a little bit of this because it's really interesting. In addition to race, the underwriting manual outlined other factors for appraisers to consider. Proximity to adverse influences was one of the most important features in assigning a grade. In this calculus, proximity to oil industry should have warranted an immediate downgrade. As stipulated by the manual, the location of nuisances, a category that included loud and odorous industries such as the oil production industry, required appraisers to severely penalize the location, perhaps to the point of rejection, meaning redline. In reality, appraisers considered the oil industry to be a nuisance in highly contradictory ways. According to the area description sheets, the region's oil industry affected 11.4% of the neighborhood surveyed. Appraisers noted oil production in 35 yellow and red line neighborhoods and 13 green and blue line neighborhoods. In the redlined areas, oil production served as self-evident for a blighting grade. In redline North Redondo Beach, for example, proximity to oil wells precludes a higher grade. In comparison, the oil industry in green and blue lined areas proved only slightly detrimental, and never blighting. Appraisers acknowledged the industry's negative effects, but consequences were negotiable. More importantly, as long as the racial future of the neighborhood remained securely white, protected through racially restrictive covenants in the area's property deeds, oil properties were never penalized to the point of rejection, as required by the manual. In Blue Line North Long Beach, for example, parts of this area might be entitled to a low green grade were it not for proximity to oil wells and refineries to the south. While in Alameda's Heights, the area is assigned a provisional rating of low yellow, but if oil well development is definitely abandoned, it will be entitled to a higher grade. Surprisingly, in blue-lined Montebello, proximity to oil fields is a favorable rather than a detrimental influence. A neighborhood's proximity to oil production clearly shaped appraisers' evaluations, but only when combined with racial subversion did the presence of oil actually produce a lower grade. Appraisers in Greenline, Oak Knolls, Long Beach noted that proximity to oil wells was acceptable because a zoning campaign pledged to keep future oil drilling out and racial restrictions in perpetuity. Additionally, an informed local opinion assured appraisers that this factor, oil wells, is not a deterrent. Even in El Segundo, a company town founded by Standard Oil, where oil wells, refinery, and tank farms were all derogatory influences, and the beach was defiled by a large outfall sewer and oil tanker docks and loading facilities, redlining was ruled out because residents protected their properties against racial hazards. There it is, right there in the historic documents.